What's up, guys? Welcome back to Deeper Dive CFB. Today, we're going to take a look at the Week 7 matchups through College Pick'em. We got a lot of good games. We got Texas OU. We got Florida LSU. We got plenty of good matchups, guys. So I'm going to go through that, rank them 1 to 10 through ESPN College Pick'em, guys. Just before we get started, I just want to say if y'all have any comments, questions, please comment down below or DM me on Instagram. My handle is at @deeperdive_CFB. So with that, guys, please enjoy the video. All right, guys, let's get right into it. So, with my 1 point game, I've got Iowa actually pulling off the upset and beating Penn State at home. I think this is it's certainly an upset. Penn State's looked really good up to this point. Really haven't played a close game besides Pitt. And Pitt definitely blew that game, and Pitt should have had a shot to win. But they haven't really played anybody else. Beat Idaho big, beat Buffalo big, killed Maryland, and beat Purdue 35-7. But I think just looking at that schedule, they haven't really played anybody legit yet. While if you look at the Hawkeyes, they've gone on the road and beaten Iowa State, who, like I've said in my previous videos, is a really underrated and pretty good team. And then obviously went on the road and struggled against Michigan, but it was still a 10-3 game. I mean, they were squarely in that game the whole time, and their defense really proved to be stout. Really the last 50 minutes of the game really played stout. Michigan got out to an early 10-0 lead. As I've mentioned, a huge reason why Iowa lost that game to Michigan was the offensive line play. I mean, allowing 8 sacks to Nate Stanley, forcing him to really rush throws. I think they fixed that in this game. You don't have to worry about playing in the big house like they did last week. Game being at home for Iowa is huge. I mean, you've seen them. 2 years ago they smoked Ohio State at home. That game wasn't close. A few years before that, Michigan was top 4 team in the country, undefeated. They beat them. You have to realize the environment that this game is gonna be played in. I mean, it's gonna be wild in Iowa. I think those fans are gonna be into it. It's gonna be a blackout. I'm taking the Hawkeyes with my 1 point pick. Next, guys, I have Texas beating Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry game. I'll be there. I'll be at the Cotton Bowl. It's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, big reason why I'm picking this game, I really just can't pick against my team. I encourage you to not pick against your team either. I'm not saying you got to put them at the 10-point confidence, but it would kind of be hypocritical to go cheer for your team and meanwhile you're picking them to lose. So I'm going to go with Texas here, but I wouldn't consider it blind faith. I mean, we've seen reasons why Texas has a chance to win this game. Biggest one being that they beat Oklahoma last year with what you could argue is a more explosive offense. They had Kyler Murray, who's definitely more explosive than Jalen Hurts. I mean, Jalen Hurts is a great runner. Don't get me wrong, but Kyler Murray's got that fast twitch, as you've seen so many times, the ability to get out of the pocket and make plays. Hurts is certainly a great scrambler, but doesn't have that same quickness, that same burst. I think Texas, defensively last week, getting 4 picks was certainly a huge bright spot. But one thing that Texas certainly has struggled with is getting a pass rush, sacking the quarterback. So they'll certainly need to do that. But to that turnover battle, I mean, Jalen Hurts has thrown picks in his last 2 games, and yeah, they've both been blowouts. But I think the turnover battle is going to be huge in this game. Sam Ehlinger did throw a pick last week too, but I would say Sam Ehlinger, definitely a very conservative quarterback. But it's not to where he's just, throwing dump-off passes, throwing 5-yard in routes. I mean, Sam will challenge you down the field. I think he's very smart with the football. And I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is not. But I will mention that I think that just like you saw last year, turnovers were huge in that game. Texas got 2 picks on Kyler Murray in the second quarter, and it turned out to be huge. Especially winning that game. Texas last year had a problem with finishing in the fourth quarter. Remember, they were up in that game 45-24, and they let OU back in it. But getting those turnovers earlier in the game really set them up to, have that leeway. But like I said, guys, you just can't pick against your team. I'm not saying you got to put them at 10. I would never feel right about that. But like I said, definitely not blind faith. I like Texas to come out of this game with a huge Big 12 win over their rival and improve to 5-1. Guys, next, we got Temple and Memphis. I'm going to take the Owls at home. Temple relies heavily on Ramon Davis, their running back. He had 24 for 157 and a touchdown last week. Previous game against Georgia Tech, he had 29 for 135 and 2 touchdowns. You've seen him really become the bell cow back there. So I like the Owls to play well at home and beat a Memphis team who like I said, is really good. I think this is a very good conference in the American. And just like another major conference, you have so many good teams. You're going to end up beating on each other a little bit. Memphis is 5-0 right now. I see that changing. So Memphis defense does concern me a little bit. It beat Louisiana Monroe last week, 52-33. But if you take a little more analyzed look at things, the Warhawks had Josh Johnson, who ran the ball 19 times for 119 yards, and they also had Caleb Evans, their quarterback, who scrambled for 112 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think Temple being able to establish the run game is going to be huge. Like I said, this game is 3 confidence for a reason. I mean, this is really a toss-up game in my mind. I think another big thing for Temple is they've beaten 2 Power 5 teams this year. Like I mentioned before, Georgia Tech, who's probably the worst team in the Power 5. Temple beat a Maryland team that was really rolling at that time. I mean, Maryland's offense was just going nuts. I mean, Maryland scored 79 and 63 in their first 2 weeks. And that second one was against Syracuse. I like the Owls' defense in this game to hold Kenneth Gainwell, who's been a great running back for Memphis. I like the Owls to hold him in check. Memphis has got a good quarterback in Brady White, but I'm gonna go with the Owls in this one, guys. Next, guys, I've got Baylor beating Texas Tech at home. Tech with a rough loss at Oklahoma really responded well last week with a big home win against the Oklahoma State Cowboys, and I think this game is gonna be a lot closer than people think. Charlie Brewer's not 100% healthy in this game. Baylor's coming off 2 physical games, playing Kansas State and Iowa State. Tech's coming off a big win. I like this game to be close early. I think at the end of the day, Baylor's got some really good receivers: Denzel Mims, Tyquan Thornton. Like I said, they have a good running game with Hasty and Lovett, and I think Brewer's going to make enough plays at the end in Waco for them to win this game. But like I said, this game's my 4 confidence for a reason. I mean, I think Tech is starting to become a stingy team. They're 3-2. Quarterback Jet Duffy really came on last week with a big game. I just like Baylor at home. I think there's a little bit of mojo going around the Bears program right now. They're 5-0. Matt Rule's been a part of a huge turnaround of that program. I think as they start to play Texas, Oklahoma, some of these bigger name Big 12 schools, I think the hype will start to go down a little bit, but I don't see any reason why it doesn't continue this week, guys. I'm picking Baylor over Texas Tech. Guys, with my 5-point game, I've got Notre Dame beating USC at home. I think this is another one of those games that's going to be a lot closer than people think. USC does get Keaton Slovis back off injury. He had that scary concussion against Utah. I think that'll certainly help him. But one thing in looking at this game, Keaton Slovis has certainly been terrific this year. Big win against Stanford that held Clay Helton off the hot seat at least for the time being. But I think one thing you have to look at is he's played 1 road game. He's really only played 2 games. He played the Stanford game, he played well. Then he played the BYU game, and on the road at BYU, he had 3 picks, and those really became costly. I mean, he was 24 of 34 for 281 and 2 touchdowns. But turnovers I think are going to be a big part of this game, especially coming off 2 weeks where he didn't play. It's actually 3 weeks because they had a bye last week. So 3 weeks without playing a game, it's certainly not going to be easy for him to just jump right back to where he was before. So I like Notre Dame to force some turnovers. I think Ian Book's, extremely efficient. They're coming off a big win at Bowling Green where it was really the Ian Book show. He was 16 of 20, 261 and 5 touchdowns. Running game looked good. They got Tony Jones. They got Saborius Flemister. I mean, they have some athletes too. So, obviously, night game in South Bend, that's never easy. Trust me. I was in South Bend when Texas played Notre Dame in 2015, and it's a great environment, definitely a bucket list place to go. I like the Fighting Irish to win this one. Switch things up a little bit with 6 through 10. So now with my 6-point game, I'm going to go with LSU defending their home turf and beating Florida. This is definitely the game of the week. 2 undefeated SEC teams going at it. Florida's been a decent surprise this year. I mean, I think we all saw them being a solid 10-win team. Start the year out undefeated. Certainly been a great pleasure. One of the biggest surprises in college football to this point. In some ways, so is LSU. Developing the new offense, becoming, not pass first, but, just having a more of a passing attack. I mean, Joe Burrow is just having a ridiculous year. Burrow's lowest passing total for the season is 278, and that was week 1 against Georgia Southern. He didn't really have to play that much. Passing totals is as follows. He had 471 against Texas, 373 against Northwestern State, 398 against Vanderbilt, 344 against Utah State, and in all those games he's got 5 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, and 5 touchdowns. I mean, he's having a incredible year. Plus he has 2 rushing touchdowns too. So, Joe Burrow has really developed as a quarterback. 5th-year senior, grad transfer from Ohio State. Burrow's made for games like this. Definitely didn't live up to the hype of last year's big game against Alabama. They got shut out of that one, but certainly has proven that he can execute this offense. During big games. Did it against Texas. I see him doing it against Florida. I mentioned this in my last video. Kyle Trask struggled with fumbles in that game against Auburn. I think this is a game where you just can't afford to do that. Going up against Auburn with a true freshman quarterback, definitely a less developed team than LSU. You can maybe afford to do that at home. Go to at Death Valley. There's just no room for that. Kyle Trask has been a great story. Kyle Trask did not start a single football game in high school, and he's a 4th-year player. So he hasn't really played in too many tough environments. Definitely doing a really good job. I just don't see them going into Death Valley and beating LSU. I actually have the score down here. I have the Tigers winning 37-26. I think Florida's going to hang around. Florida's got a really good defense. They proved that last week. But I think Joe Brady, leading this LSU offense, it's just too dynamic. I like them pulling away late and winning by a significant margin. All right, guys, next, I got Alabama going on the road to College Station and beating the Aggies. It's one of those games for A&M where it's going to be more about how they play, versus the result. Because even though I said previously in the video that, you do have to pick your home team, I would say there's plenty of Aggies out there who probably are not picking them to win this game. I just think they want to see a good brand of football. Kellen Mond is definitely not lived up to the hype this year. He hasn't been inefficient as far as completion percentage goes. He just hasn't made the big play, and he's made too many bonehead plays at that. Didn't look good against Clemson. 24-10 looks good on paper, especially defensively. And the defense hasn't been the issue. Certainly haven't been able to get off the field at times. But defense hasn't been the issue. This is an offensive thing. Fisher is an offensive guy, and I think fans just want to see the offense be a little more creative. Especially in a conference like the SEC, where you see teams like LSU, Alabama, who've gone from more of a traditional pro-style system to really airing the ball out with guys like Tua and Joe Burrow. I think A&M fans want to see that, and I think this is a really important game for them as far as fan base goes. Obviously that's a very tight fan base. Very good tradition. They've invested too much money into Jimbo Fisher, too much money into Kyle Field, too much money into that program to not stay relevant in the SEC West. I don't think the SEC is what it typed up to be, but I think specifically the SEC West is definitely the best division in college football. Teams like Ole Miss and Mississippi State are starting to fall behind, and those are traditionally really good programs, especially Mississippi State. They've really come on in the last few years, and it's just one of those divisions where 1 year can be up, one year can be down, and I think A&M's at risk of kind of falling into that lower category of the West. Like I said, they got to compete with Bama and LSU every year, and that's tough. Not to mention Auburn. This is a really important game for A&M as far as how they play, but I just don't see any way that they're going to be able to pull off an upset. So many things are going to have to go right. Alabama's got so many receivers. It's unreal. They got Henry Ruggs. They got Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith, you could argue, is the 4th best receiver on the team, and he had 5 touchdowns against Ole Miss 2 weeks ago. It's just stuff like that. This team is so talented. They got basically a 3rd-year quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa. They got a good run game with Najee Harris, Brian Robinson. This is a really complete offense. I think one question is the defense, and they're going to need to address the defense at some point. They've had so many injuries, especially at the linebacker position, and this is not the same Alabama defense that we're used to seeing. A legitimate concern going down the road. I just don't see that applying this week. I think A&M can put some points up, especially late. I'd like it to be 48-30, something like that. I think A&M will throw on some points late, but I definitely like the Tide in this game. All right, guys, with my 8-point pick, I'm going with Boise State to beat Hawaii at home. This is a late game, 10:15 kick, 10:15 Eastern time. I'm Central time, but 10:15 Eastern. Boise State's 5-0. Big win against UNLV on the road last week. Certainly, it's been one of the best programs in college football these last 15 years. Chris Peterson really got it up and going, and Brian Harsin has done a great job continuing that great brand of football, up there in Boise. Hawaii certainly has a great team this year. They're 4-1. I've mentioned this in my previous videos, but have wins over Arizona and Oregon State this year. So beating 2 Power 5 teams, certainly not just some rollover of a team. They're 4-1. They have a great quarterback in Cole McDonald, great offense. I just think Boise State's a more complete team. Defense for Boise State's really stepped up since that Florida State win. I mean, Florida State really dominated that game in the first half. Freshman quarterback Hank Bachmeier was able to lead that comeback for the Broncos. But defense has certainly stepped up these last few weeks. I mean, held Portland State to 10, held Air Force to 19, held UNLV in Las Vegas to just 13. So I think Boise State's the more complete team here. Looking at Hawaii, I mean, they've given up 52 this year. Washington, I just think Boise State at home, like I said, very, very bought-in program when it comes to the fans. It's one of the most consistent programs dating back to the early 2000s. I don't see that changing. I'm going to go with Boise State here. And I like them to improve to 6-0 and possibly be one of those teams, like I mentioned, with maybe an SMU, one of those teams from the American, compete for a New Year's Six. So I like Boise State continuing that trend and getting a big win this week at home. Guys, last two with my 9-point game. I'm going with Wisconsin to defend their home turf against Michigan State. They got a very efficient quarterback in Jake Cohn. Definitely not one of the elite quarterbacks in college football, but just a good game manager. And then, they got Jonathan Taylor. I think JT's going to be the big story of this game. I think he's going to run for, I would say at least 150, maybe 200 yards. I think his Heisman campaign only gets stronger and stronger. Michigan State's been able to, play, pretty good defense this year against some good teams. I mean, held Arizona State to 10, and really holding Ohio State to 34 is honestly a win. And I imagine if you're Mark D'Antonio, you'd have to be thinking that, okay, we held Justin Fields and all the weapons he has at 34. We ought to at least have a fighting chance. Michigan State's really one of those teams that hasn't bought into, to the idea of, a real true spread offense. And, it's really hurting them because, most of these Big Ten schools have made that move. I mean, I think Ohio State's really perfected it. Penn State's really done it these last few years. Michigan, it's really gone from, one of those old school type of conferences to, kind of, expanding their wings a little bit and developing. I think Michigan State's definitely fallen behind on that. It's not really Mark D'Antonio's fault necessarily. Mark D'Antonio is only going to be able to coach the guys that he has. So I think he's got to do a better job recruiting, possibly a better quarterback. I mean, but some of Brian Lewerke's completion percentage numbers are just not good. I mean, 50% against Indiana, 52% against Ohio State, 56.8% against Tulsa, and kind of the mantra around some of these old school offenses is completion percentage, and so run that style of offense and not having an efficient quarterback, that's just a backbreaker. So I'm gonna go with Wisconsin in this one, guys. Big. Last one, guys, I'm going with Clemson to win a huge rivalry game and beat Florida State at home. Florida State's gotten a bad rap this year, especially early on. Losing to Boise State, losing to Virginia, barely squeaking by Louisiana Monroe, but Seminoles have actually looked pretty good their last two games. Two big home wins, beating Louisville, beating NC State, and these are both 2-3 possession games. So it's not like they're just playing a bunch of nail biters. I mean, Florida State's certainly starting to come on. I think this was more about Clemson. It's a rivalry game. They'll have plenty of motivation to come out and dominate. As I've said, I think we as college football fans, really overreact to too much. And at the end of the day, Clemson's going to have to lose a game before I start doubting them. I mean, they were 15-0 last year, national champions. Trevor Lawrence has not lived up to the hype this year, but he also hasn't played bad. I mean, I think, listening to some people in media, some people who talk about him, he's just no good, just a sophomore slump. I mean, at the end of the day, he's still Trevor Lawrence. He's still one of the best quarterbacks in college football. But coming off a bye week, I see no reason why, Clemson's not going to start to find their stride again. I've said, weak ACC. I think I'm not saying Clemson's going to go win another national championship, but just not seeing a tough road to get there. While Florida State has played well these last two games, going on the road to Clemson and beating them just seems almost impossible. So I'm going to go with Clemson in this one. I think they bounce back off the bye. I think they start to gel together a little bit and start to play like the Clemson team that we're used to seeing. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up the video for today. I hope y'all enjoyed, guys. Please let me know if y'all thought I was wrong about anything, if y'all agree with me, or just anything college football related. I mean, I'm a huge fan, and I would love to engage with y'all about it. So with that, guys, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, share with a friend, and turn on your post notifications, guys, so y'all know when I have a new video going up. Thank you again, guys, and we'll see you on Sunday.